Morning to you, Charley Crowson, inside the nest here at ABC2. You know this guy. This is Scott Garceau. He was at the game yesterday in M&T Bank Stadium where going in, Ravens had to win. Ravens had to have help. Both things houghts of the game.
We had one of those computer experts that feeds everything into the machine, and they said it was a 40% likelihood, even though everybody had the Ravens winning. They were, 13, 14-point favorite.
And you've got a third-string quarterback coming up the practice squad, Connor Shaw, with Cleveland.
I think we felt good about that, not going into the fourth quarter, but going into the game. But then the other thing was, how would that Kansas City-San Diego game play out? So he thought it was a 40% chance that both of those things would fall in place. Turned out pretty good. I mean, you felt good. You were seeing scores. Everybody had their eyes on the scoreboard. Everything was happening right in Kansas City. But then you look up, and here are the Ravens down 10-3 going into the fourth quarter. Fans are booing the home team. It's not going well.
That's what I wanted to tell you about. At that point, going into the third quarter at that point, Scott, they were anemic in the first half. Once again, it was a retread of what we saw in Miami, against Jacksonville, against Houston.
It's a pattern.
It happened again. And if not for the fourth quarter, we might be having a different conversation today.
Oh, this town would have been crazy today, Charlie, if they lost at home to the Browns. Kansas City takes care of their business with San Diego, and the Ravens don't get in after that fiasco last week in Houston. There would have been a lot of people upset, but Joe Flacco, the offense, they found some rhythm. There's some good pass protection. That offensive line that's kind of patchwork right now. With both
patchwork since week 2.
Yeah, both tackles out of this game. Flacco got it going. They made some plays in the fourth quarter. They are in. It hasn't been pretty, but they are in.
Want to hear from you and what your thoughts are about the game itself as things went back. We'll come back with Scott in 1 second. Going to go out to the newsroom now with Lauren Cook. She's been watching the social wires for us. What are fans saying today about it, Lauren? Because as Scott just pointed out, midway through the third yesterday, the fans were letting it know they were not happy with the Ravens at all.
They were not, but they were very happy with the outcome. We're talking playoff predictions right now on Twitter using the hashtag The Nest as well as Facebook. And let's go straight to Facebook to see some of your comments. Right now, writing in Patty Cross saying one and done. Chris Emery posting a Ravens Steelers-oriented picture there. Barb Clark Bernhardt saying Ravens will win. It will be ugly. Don Dillon siding with the Steelers, saying Ravens 0-3 at Heinz in the playoffs, but Flacco does own the NFL record for playoff wins. Eugene Eddy also going with the Steelers. Barbara Tussing saying Ravens all the way, and Crystal Garceau writing in, Steelers win at home will be a close-scored game, though, and definitely will be an ugly game, which always makes it more interesting. Jim McGrath saying Steelers 31, Ravens 13, and Charles McLeod, Pittsburgh away, prime time. That's an ugly recipe. Hopefully, fingers crossed right here that the Ravens can pull off a win against the Steelers. And we want to hear from you. Go to Facebook. Go to my Facebook page, Charlie's Facebook page. And again, you can always talk to us through Twitter using the hashtag The Nest. Let's send it back into you guys.
All right, that is Lauren Cook out there watching the social wires right now. Checking the Vegas odds on the game right now. We're going to pull those up for you in just 1 second. Going back to the game itself, though, Scott, talked about the fourth quarter being so instrumental for Baltimore to take the lead and go ahead, because going into the fourth, they were down 10-3.
10-3. Terrence West, the kid from Towson, scores the touchdown, and you're thinking, oh, my God, they're going to let this one get away.
10.5 minutes Baltimore held the ball in the fourth quarter, scoring those 2 touchdowns to Aiken and to Torrey Smith, proving to be the difference. Prior to that time, though, Baltimore's offense was not on the field the entire time. Once again, it's another death march for the defense.
Yeah, it is. And last week, turnovers, short fields, the defense was up against it the whole game. And I thought the defense played great in Houston. This week, it was kind of more the same. The offense doesn't get going until the fourth quarter. I think in the fourth quarter, Flacco had hit 8 of 9 passes, 160-some yards, and 2 touchdowns. But who was that guy and who was that team prior to that? That's been the head-scratcher for the Ravens this year. Slow starts, no consistency with the offense. The running game has slowed down some. Justin Forsett got to 100 yesterday, but the run game had slowed down a little bit. And they have to play better than that to win in Pittsburgh on Saturday night.
All right, talking about Pittsburgh going into that game right now, early numbers have Pittsburgh in at a 4-point favorite.
Yeah, I told you 3-4, I guess.
You called that right there, a 4-point favorite, not surprising.
Home field's usually worth 3 points, so they're saying maybe add a point to that. The interesting story, injury factor. Le'Veon Bell, who I think right now might be the best running back in the league. Combination back, can catch the ball out of the backfield, can run. He can run inside. He's a power runner. He can make the big plays. Hyperextends his knee in last night's game against the Bengals. I'm not a doctor. He looked like he was in a lot of pain from a Sunday night game, not a Sunday afternoon game.
The extra 24 hours matters here.
Sunday night game to a Saturday night game, that's a very quick turnaround. They're not as good with Le'Veon Bell. They still have some playmakers. Ben Roethlisberger will be there.
That's what I want to ask you about. Because
Antonio Brown.
Keith Miller, Antonio Brown, Ben Roethlisberger still being out there. And we do know the porous problems that Baltimore has with their secondary. And that's been one of the bigger problems. It's been DB by committee back there. Is this something you expect Pittsburgh to try to exploit?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The Ravens been fortunate. The secondary really in trouble the last few weeks with injuries. It was Blake Bortles, the rookie who led the league in interceptions.
Right.
And then it was Case Keenum, who had been deer hunting the week before, when he got the call and said, hey, we need a quarterback. Can you put the shotgun down and come back and run the shotgun, right? And then this week, the same thing. Cleveland Brown loses Hoyer. They lose Johnny Manziel. They're down to their third quarterback.
Connor Shaw was actually a player under Steve Spurrier at South Carolina, so I had a chance to watch him.
Yeah,
he is a serviceable quarterback and does a good job.
He just didn't have much time to prepare. It's not easy to pick up an offense like that. Suggs said yesterday something interesting after the game. He said the thing with a Connor Shaw, he said it's like playing backyard football. You know, he'll jump out of a play real quick and just kind of scramble around. And he says as a defender, that makes your job a little tougher. You're not quite sure what they're running because he'll break it down and just run what he wants, draw it in the dirt and do it.
All right, now let's move forward now to Ravens Pittsburgh and what's coming up Saturday night. This is the primetime game, of course. It's going to be on CBS, I believe, has this one for us. This is the third meeting of these teams. Both teams have blown each other out. Yep. Baltimore did it in week 2. Pittsburgh did it in week 12. So, I mean, rubber match, emotions, the fact that this is Pittsburgh for Baltimore. Do you see the team being able to get up? Or is the stage going to be too big?
No, the stage isn't too big. The Ravens and Steelers have been banging heads for a long time. They both know what each other's about. The Ravens' history isn't good in the playoffs. They've lost 3 to the Steelers. I think the first one was in 2001, the year after they won the Super Bowl. They lost in Pittsburgh. They lost an AFC Championship game in Pittsburgh. They lost a game where they had a huge first-half lead, and the Steelers rallied to beat them. So it's never easy on the road. Just think about this Raven path. Let's just say they get to the Super Bowl.
Okay.
I'm way ahead of you, but let's say they get there. They will have to go through Pittsburgh. We definitely know if they win in Pittsburgh, they play at New England.
Got it.
And they would probably have to play the AFC Championship game in Denver against Peyton Manning and those guys, and then go on to meet a Seattle or Green Bay or somebody like that in the Super Bowl. This isn't easy, but nobody said it would be.
But I want to go back to this. So we're projecting forward 5 weeks. Now let's go back to week 1.
Okay.
What was the big story week 1? Of course,
Ray Rice.
Ray Rice.
Ray Rice, yeah.
Okay, you lose to Cincinnati in your opener, at home, mind you.
Yep.
Then the next week, we have no idea what this team is going to look like. NFL networks down outside M&T Bank Stadium have no idea what's going to happen on Thursday night. And what happens? They blow out Pittsburgh 26-6. And then you have this going back and forth. We have running back by committee with Taliaferro, Pierce, and Forsett.
Yep.
Then you have the losing of Jimmy Smith.
Well, that was
Darius Webb going down.
Yeah.
You have the offensive line problems.
Haloti Ngata suspended.
Okay. Now, all of that put together in a stew, and I tell you, they still make the playoffs. Can you live with that as a fan?
Well, I could, and I said last week when everybody, because you only remember what just happened. What just happened was a stinker in Houston last week, so people were upset. But I said if they go 10-6 and don't make the playoffs, that is disappointing, but that's not a bad year. I looked at this team coming into the year. They were 8-8 a year ago. What do you think they'll be? And you look at the schedule and you play that silly game, win-loss, win-loss.
Right.
I had them around 10-6. And you mentioned it. Losing Jimmy Smith, I think, was the biggest blow
that
they
seemed
took.
to be the point where things began to teeter just a little bit because the running back by committee, 2 running backs good, 3 maybe too many cooks in the kitchen, but Smith was where things began
they got real lucky.
They did get
Justin
lucky.
Forsett, who'd been a journeyman veteran, nice third-down player, became a special back, led the NFL in average per carry. So they got very fortunate there. The offensive line last year, a year ago, was horrendous, among the worst in the league. They were 32nd last in the league in average per carry. This year, Justin Forsett leads the NFL in average per carry. So the line got better. The defensive secondary took a bunch of hits. That's not a very good group right now. I think their front seven can play with anybody.
I want to say the offset of the front seven can somewhat mask that.
A pass rush from Dumerville and Suggs can cover up some inadequacies in that secondary. Remember this now, Halodinata is back for the playoffs.
Right.
He has served his 4 games. He's back. But Timmy Jernigan, who's played very well as a rookie, he suffered a foot injury in yesterday's win over the Browns. I don't think he's going to be around at least for this week against Pittsburgh.
All right,
that's my guess.
Now let's
but
go forward to Pittsburgh. You're playing Ben Roethlisberger again. Le'Veon Bell's going to be the injuries. Don't know about that. Where do you see this game breaking down?
Well, the Ravens' defense will be tested. Antonio Brown's probably the best receiver in the National Football League, so I'm not sure who matches up with him. Probably Lardarius Webb. You don't shut him out. You hope to contain him. They've got some good other young receivers. They've got Heath Miller, who you mentioned, who's that solid veteran that Ben looks for on 3rd and 7. He'll catch that 9, 10-yard pass. Steelers' offense is very good. They're not as good without Le'Veon Bell, but the Steelers have some issues on defense. Their defense isn't that steel curtain defense that we're used to seeing in Pittsburgh. I think Joe Flacco can make some plays against that Pittsburgh defense. A healthy Justin Forsett can run the ball. I think the Ravens can score some points against the Steelers. I think this whole game comes down to the Ravens secondary and pass rush being able to, they don't have to dominate, but maintain, hold their own against the Steelers' offense. If they can do that, they got a chance maybe to pull an upset.
All right, we're going to push the pause button real quickly here and go back to you and what you saw yesterday at M&T Bank Stadium. It's what we call user-generated content. You ever seen this?
Sounds pretty important.
It is very important. Kirsten Dyes does this for us right now. She goes through the social media sites and sees the photos and various posts that other fans post up. Kirsten, are you with us yet? All right, we're going to try to get Kirsten up in just 1 second. And while we're waiting for Kirsten to come up to show us what you were showing online yesterday, we got to get to some of the firings because as you had joined us this morning at 9 o'clock.
Hey, get your resumes ready.
Exactly. You want to coach
5
the
openings.
NFL? You want to coach the NFL? We'll put something together. Goulden, you want to coach?
Sure. We got 5 jobs.
You want to coach down in Washington, Steve? You want to coach down in Washington?
He doesn't want to coach that team.
Gruden still has his job for right now.
I'll be the defensive coordinator.
First shot fired this morning on the firing side was Rex Ryan. No surprise they're out of New York.
No surprise. I think Rex cleaned out his desk Saturday. 6 years there, got him to 2 AFC championship games. I think his defenses have been top 10 almost every year, maybe 111th in there. Rex was a good job. Never really figured out the quarterback position. I think Rex, I wouldn't be surprised if Rex shows up Gruden-like on some NFL show, maybe does TV for a year or two, could probably have his choice of defensive coordinator's job. I don't know if he comes back as a head coach. I love Rex.
Is he going to grow his hair out like his brother?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think that's Rob's deal, not Rex's. But wish Rex well. And a lot of these firings today have Raven ties to them. We want
to break those down coming up in just a second. Kirsten's standing by right now with our user-generated content. So what are fans saying about the game yesterday, Kirsten? Moreover, what are they showing?
All right, well, this morning the tone is very celebratory. Last night, yesterday afternoon, it was very, shall we say, skeptical during the game, at least the first
show us the skepticism.
And perhaps rightfully so. There was also a lot of red being worn at M&T Bank Stadium, cheering on that Kansas City win, which meant the difference for us ultimately. So there was a lot of this gentleman, Matthew Soroka, tweeted, Chargers choke in a big game, miss the playoffs, and Ravens finish strong, make the playoffs, and once again, all is right with the world. So, again, there's some happy fans this morning. I don't know how many people thought they were really going to pull it off. So it was good to see the celebration, good to see a good representation of Ravens fans, even this late in the season, with this question.
Real quickly for you, Kirsten, and my apologies for interrupting you. Is there any way you can pull up something on your screen so we can see exactly what you're talking about?
Is it
called a split screen, I think?
No, I thought I hit that. Hold on a second.
My apologies.
No, I hit that. It's not doing it. Hold on.
This looks like me running the computer.
Well, our director in the booth was just saying that she can't see it. I looked up because I was looking at some
I
stuff.
hit share screen, and it's not letting me do it again. So I don't know what the issue is.
Control-Alt-Delete.
Did you restart? That's what
I would have to log on to
highlights.
that. We can put a pin in that, but there's a lot of stuff that folks are saying. I don't know why it's not showing.
I tell you what, Kirsten, see if you can help us out with that. We'll come back to you on this because I really want to see what people were saying at the stadium yesterday and what they were showing.
I'll see if I can figure it out.
We're going to come back to Kirsten Dice here in just 1 second. Going back to the firings, a lot of Baltimore ties to these coaches. I'm just going to go through the timeline of the whole thing because we knew about Jim Harbaugh yesterday.
Who, by the way, was
agreement to leave San Francisco.
Yeah, I think that. You know what? I heard around week 3 or 4, Jason Lockenforer was telling me that he said he might win the Super Bowl and be out of there. That thing was so toxic between he and the front office, the GM Trent Baalke, that thing was. There was going to be a separation there.
There was talk of a trade, a coach trade of him across the bay to Oakland. I mean, this was something, and that was pretty much a poorly kept secret right around week 10, if I remember correctly.
Sure, and the tie there, of course, is his brother's the Ravens head coach, but he was also the Ravens quarterback here in 1999. He was the starting quarterback for the Ravens, so he's headed on to the old maize and blue. He'll be at the big house. Exactly.
Ian Rappaport with NFL Network is now saying that he's probably going to take a flight later today with his wife into Ann Arbor, be announced tomorrow as the head coach at Michigan, and is supposed to be at a basketball game tomorrow night where he'll be introduced at halftime to the fans. No one's really surprised by this.
And remember this. Jim and John grew up in Ann Arbor, went to Ann Arbor Pioneer High School. Jack Harbaugh coached for Bo
all of
Schembechler
the features that
at
happened
Michigan.
during Super Bowl 47 highlighted all this.
So that's all tied back to Michigan, and you hear the Harbaughs quoting Bo Schembechler constantly.
Oh, sure.
They grew up in that era.
Have you seen this yet? The Detroit Free Press?
Yeah.
There's your headline. All signs point to Harbaugh at UM. Who's that guy? That's not
They got the wrong,
They got the wrong
Harbaugh. Even my old eyes can see that one, right?
This photograph has been tweeted, retweeted, shared, and favorited. I mean, you'll just go through your timelines on Twitter, and then you'll see it, and you'll just keep going through your news, and of course you retweet it, you favorite it, and then you go through, and then someone else has done it. Someone else. I've probably seen this picture 4 times since our director.
And you know what?
Gallagher.
If the Ravens, if it would have turned out bad for the Ravens yesterday and they weren't in the playoffs, I'm sure that John would have been on his way to Ann Arbor to be there with his brother when he was introduced tomorrow. But
probably not surprising at all.
He's got a lot going on this week, getting ready
few
for the
things,
Steelers.
few things to take care of. All right, Kirsten is back out there right now with the UGC. Kirsten, how's it going?
All right, let's give this a
There
try.
you go.
See that now?
We got
it.
All right, awesome. I don't know what was going on. Anyway, there was a lot of celebration after that win, and there were a lot of Ravens fans wearing red. There was some celebration, obviously, of the Kansas City win, which typically, Ravens wouldn't necessarily be rooting for that. But it was a great outcome. Everything that needed to happen did happen, and a lot of folks were really excited about that. Beg your pardon. So these are the photos that I was showing earlier that you couldn't really get a really great look at. But hopefully that gives you a little bit better sense of what was going on at M&T Bank Stadium and on the field.
All right,
and again,
Kirsten.
we've got a Ravens fan wearing a Kansas City hat. So that was kind of the theme yesterday.
He's got his Chiefs hat on, his Raven jersey, his Chiefs hat.
Do you find it odd that just a few months ago we were at odds? I mean, it's absolute odds with Kansas City over the ALCS, and now yesterday we had to root for Kansas City to help us get in the playoffs.
Hey, we'd root for the Steelers if it meant something good for the Ravens. I mean, it's always about your own team, and sometimes that creates some strange bedfellows.
All right, some great photos for us right there. Kirsten Dies this morning. Thank you so much for that.
Absolutely.
All right, now Jim Harbaugh going to Michigan, in all likelihood announced tomorrow. Then the next firing came down. That was Mike Smith, the head coach down in Atlanta, and immediately you said another Baltimore tie.
Yeah, Baltimore tie. He's the brother-in-law of Brian Billick, the former Ravens head coach that won a Super Bowl here. Mike was kind of mentored with Rex Ryan on the Ravens defense as an assistant. Went to Atlanta, really did a good job in the early years, but they've tapered off and kind of see it was time for a change there, and they really laid an egg yesterday in a game that would have had them with a home field playoff game.
Exactly. The winner of the Carolina-Atlanta game was going to win the South, which is the worst division in all pro football, but they would host a game, and it turns out to be Arizona. What more incentive do you need if you're Atlanta?
I think Carolina's going to beat Arizona. That's just
4.5 point favorite
and
right
I
now.
think if Atlanta would have won that game yesterday, they would have beat Arizona and been into the second round.
Talking about Arizona, the problems they face. Carson Palmer goes out midway through the season. Drew Stanton comes in and does a serviceable job. He was a fine quarterback. But when he went down, Arizona really ran into problems because they were propped up by their defense. Well, defense can only do so much.
Yeah, Todd Bowles, their defensive coordinator, by the way, look for him to get one of those 5 job openings. I think his time has come.
5 jobs open right now, and you pointed out some of these I didn't even remember. Oakland's job still has a vacancy.
Yeah,
now San Francisco, Atlanta, now the Jets, and then the most recent one per Jason LaCanfora. Trestman's going to be out at Chicago, as is Emery, the GM.
Yeah, so the clean house in Chicago. I thought Trestman might get another year, but when that story came out with the quarterback coach bad-mouthing Jay Cutler and then having to apologize to the team. So not only is Cutler in the dumpster, the team's in the dumpster, you got coaches throwing players under the bus. It was time. That probably did Trestman in as much as anything. Can't even control his own staff.
In what world does Jay Cutler become a sympathetic character?
Only in that one. Only in that one when his coach threw him under the bus because he made more money this year in the NFL than any other player, and he was benched around, week 15, I think.
Sure.
Yeah.
The press conference was 2 weeks ago, and he leaves this press conference after Trestman just absolutely scorches him, and you feel bad for the kid.
It isn't Cutler's fault that they gave him $127 million or whatever it was, I guess, but it is his fault when he keeps throwing passes to the other team.
What does your boy Jeremy Kahn say about Cutler?
Love Jay. He can sling it. And you know what I say? As a lifelong Packer fan growing up back there, I want Jay Cutler to be the Bears quarterback for the next 15 years because he keeps throwing balls to the Packers, right?
All right. Now that is Jeremy Kahn is actually co-host alongside Scott Garceau every day on 105.7 The Fan. I did not introduce you earlier as Scott Garceau from 105.7 The Fan, but everyone here at the Deuce knows who you are. All right, playoff football as it comes. We've already begun setting up some of these games. We touched on, obviously, Baltimore-Pittsburgh. That's the prime game Saturday night. You mentioned the Carolina-Arizona game. That's the 4:30 game on Fox.
That's one people aren't changing their weekend plans to see unless they live in those two markets.
Can you make sense out of Carolina, though?
No. Their defense came up big against Atlanta. As you said, 2 pick sixes and a fumble that was returned inside the 5. So that was 21 points off their defense right there. If their defense can make some plays, they got a good young receiver in Kelvin Benjamin. They've got a quarterback who can make plays. We know that.
Yes.
And if they can run the ball some, they should be able to hang into football games. Greg Olsen, their tight end, can make some plays in the passing game as well. But it's not a great team. That's why they're below 500.
They are below 500. They had the tie against Cincinnati. Now, the voice of God who's in the booth right now, our own Larry Carney. Larry, are you there?
I've never heard Larry's and God's name mentioned in the same sentence before.
I'm actually feeling very there, the voice of God right now. Larry, I want you to repeat what you said prior to the show. If Carolina wins this game and then goes on to play Seattle, you like that matchup better. Why?
Well, I like it better. I think it's their best shot. Carolina has a very good running game. They have a decent defense. You keep the game close.
All right, there you go. Larry Carney was talking about that.
I think what Larry's talking about, we saw it with the Rams yesterday because the Rams have a nice defense. The Rams and Seahawks were tied, I think, 6-6 early in the fourth quarter.
Late, yes.
Yeah, and then the Seahawks got it rolling, and the score didn't look as close as the game was. But that's kind of the same recipe that Carolina would need, I think, to have a chance to pull an upset in Seattle. But Seahawks are so tough at home.
All right, flipping over to Sunday's games, and we're going to have the Indianapolis Colts taking on the Cincinnati Bengals. Of course, last night's game between Pittsburgh and Cincinnati was just positioning more than anything else. Colts hosting that game with Cincinnati. What do you see?
I like Indy. I like Andrew Luck. Their defense can be horrible at times. I think the Bengals. Now, A.J. Green got shaken up a little last night. I don't know how serious that is.
Fallen right now into the NFL's concussion protocol criteria, so he's being watched very closely.
Yeah, if they don't have A.J. Green, that's a big loss for the Bengals. Hopefully he's ready to play. Both of those teams have flaws. I kind of like Indy a little more because of the quarterback situation. Andy Dalton hasn't come up very big. As a matter of fact, he's been very small in the postseason.
All right, primetime game, Detroit going to be in Dallas taking on Tony Romo and the Cowboys. You know, this isn't Aikman, Smith, Irvin. But
you know what?
There are pieces to this Cowboys team that are attractive.
You got a running back who ran for over 1,800 yards.
DeMarco Murray's awesome.
DeMarco Murray can get it up and down the field. Romo's having his best year ever, and I think would probably be in the top 5 for the MVP vote this year. I think so.
Big.
Look at his numbers; they're very good. His quarterback rating is the best in the league. It's better
I
than
saw
Aaron
his
Rodgers.
red zone quarterback rating yesterday. It was like 121 in the red zone. 19 touchdowns, only 1 pick. Said he was the best inside the red zone in the NFL.
Their offensive line might be the best in the NFL. Des Bryant, we know what he can do. He's as talented as any wide receiver in the NFL. So there is a lot to like about the Dallas offense. And their defense has played better than most thought it would this year, because they came in and we were saying, who's going to play linebacker for the Cowboys? We had no idea. I mean, they had guys injured, guys left through free agency. They've done a pretty good job defensively. I think Dallas wins that game at home, but Detroit's very good defensively. Stafford can get hot. He's got Kelvin Johnson to throw the football to. I like that game. That might be one of those 4 games this week. That matchup might be more intriguing to me than any of the other 3.
All right, that is the primetime game on Sunday night. So let's touch real quickly, Scott, before we call it a day here on the Nest. The 4 bye teams with the AFC first. Is New England still the class of the AFC?
I think they are. That team, once Gronk got healthy, because they looked pretty ordinary early on. Once Gronk came in and he got healthy, they were a different football team. And Bill Belichick and Brady in the postseason. I'll tell you one team that's not afraid to go to New England, though. That's the Baltimore Ravens. They've had success there in the past. I don't think the Ravens fear Belichick, Brady, whatever. If they get up there, they'll get after them. That'll be a good football game. But New England deserves to be the best team in the AFC. They're the number 1 seed. Denver's the interesting team for me.
Explain, because
I think you and I are probably thinking the same thing, because we've seen Peyton Manning throw it 45 times for 450 yards.
They've changed the offense completely
and all
in
of
the past
a sudden,
4 weeks.
Peyton went 2 back-to-back games where he threw the ball 20 times. We saw what he did last week when he threw 4 picks. One was a pick 6.
Yep. Threw for 268 last night and no touchdowns.
I know age is catching up. The cold weather isn't good for Peyton. Is his arm a little tired late in the year? He doesn't look like Peyton Manning.
That's the thing. He does not look like that elite quarterback that we have come to know. And maybe it's the obviously I don't know. The neck injury was always
Sure.
the thing that stood out. Which
But
of
I mean,
course, why
first 2/3 of the year he looked like Peyton Manning. He was
yes,
putting up big numbers.
something changed 4 or 5 games ago with him, where it was a completely different game, and the game plan was completely different. And on the field, he's an offensive coordinator as he plays, and he said there were no health problems, no injuries, anything to worry about. They just found things that worked with their running game.
Yeah, their running game is good. Their defense is good. I think this is a better team than they've been the last couple of years because of where their defense is now, and they can run the ball. Remember Elway? Elway was a great quarterback, and what was the knock on him? He hasn't won the big one.
And then he found Terrell Davis.
Terrell Davis came in. He cut down on the throwing a little bit, and they won 2 Super Bowls. So maybe that's the way this Denver team. It's a very good team.
They're and they've been a very interesting team. Over
I'm
the
not
past 4
sure
weeks.
Denver can go to New England and beat the Patriots.
All right, prove it. Well,
I
in the
wonder
regular
about
season,
that.
they already proved
Yeah,
that
right.
can't happen right now. On the NFC side of things right now, you say you're a lifelong Packers fan. What do you think? What do you think about the Packers right now, especially Aaron Rodgers needing that bye week?
Well, 2 weeks to get that calf ready. If he doesn't have the mobility in the pocket, you might be able to get by in week 1 at Lambeau against Dallas or whoever comes in there. But if you have to go to Seattle and play that defense, Aaron Rodgers is going to have 90-95% of his pass. He can't play at 60 or 65%, not be able to move in the pocket, make a few plays with his feet. If that's the case, it'll be tough for Green Bay to win in Seattle.
All right, now once again, ending with Seattle, seems like once again a team of 2 halves. First 8 games trying to figure out who their new identity was. The last 8 games, though, they are the class of the NFC.
They are the best team in the NFL. Forget NFC. They are the best team in the NFL right now. But I think if we went back and looked over the last 6-7 years in the playoffs, the best team going in has maybe won half the time. Something happens along the way. The number 1 seeds don't always get there. They don't always win. So that's why we watch on Saturdays and Sundays now.
All right, as a reminder, that game kicks off being between Baltimore and Pittsburgh, 8:15 on CBS. That's Saturday night from Pittsburgh. You going to be there?
I'm not sure, but if I'm not there, I'll be watching.
Do you do prediction? Because I asked Glenn Eunice once to do a prediction. I thought he was going to punch me.
No, I'm not a big prediction guy, but if you had to ask me for my pick right now, I'd say, yeah, the Steelers deserve to be a slight favorite. I'd take the Steelers.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
That's not Charlie, I have to explain to people. People ask me they go, what are you doing? You're a Baltimore guy.
It's a
you
fair-
pick the Steelers. I am asked who I think's going to win the game, not who I hope will win the game.
Okay, exactly. And you said it's a fair line, it's a fair number
Yeah.
with a fair favorite.
Do I think the Ravens can win that game? Absolutely, they have a chance. But if you had to ask me who I think is a little better, if Le'Veon Bell isn't playing, that tightens this thing up.
Changes the whole
Maybe
thing.
then it's a 1 or 2 point Pittsburgh favorite instead of a 3 or 4.
All right, Scott
All right,
Garceau
Charlie.
joining us on The Nest
Same
as
here.
always. abc2news.com/The Nest. Our shows are always archived, so you can go in and check out shows from weeks past. Hold us to our word and let us know what we got right and what we got wrong. Scott, thank you.
Charlie, good to see you.
All right, hashtag The Nest throughout the course of your day and all week. See you next Monday on The Nest, abc2news.com.